Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to RotoPros.com, the best DFS show that just happens to start at 8 Eastern Standard Time. My name is Rob Diamond, Rad Rob Diamond on Twitter, Sir Robert 6 on all the main sites. Appreciate you tuning in today. We have a huge NHL slate on tap for this evening, which I'm really excited about. 12 games, so we have a ton of different options across the board. All I'm going to do is go game by game here and try and break down exactly what I think is going to happen and which are the really viable plays. And there are some value plays across the board. There are no questions. So we just have to try and examine them the best that we can. Reviewing last night really quickly, it was an absolute whitewash of brutality across the board. I didn't really have much exposure to Stars, Maple Leafs, nor the Sharks, and I faced an awful lot of game stacks and cash heads up. So things didn't go very well, but that's the way it goes sometimes when it's GPP. So I'm not really too concerned. I know my process was still pretty spot on. Across the board, all the players were excellent, so I'm not really all that upset about it at the end of the day. Another day here, another evening tonight. So let's jump right in here. As always, we'll jump right into the screen share. Get that set up. There we go. So let's bring in some DraftKings. Just give me 1 second here. There we go. Okay, let me see, make sure that looks okay. Yeah, I think we're good to go with that. So yeah, here is the excuse me, the slate here for this evening. Edmonton are at Boston, Colorado are at Buffalo, Columbus is at Florida, Washington at New Jersey. They're on a back-to-back. San Jose is at the Rangers. Vegas is at Pittsburgh. Vegas is on a back-to-back. LA is at Montreal. Toronto is at Detroit. Vancouver is at Tampa Bay. Calgary is at St. Louis. And Winnipeg is at Nashville. And then the last game of the night is Chicago heading over to Minnesota. As always, I apologize for the throat clearing. I don't have a lot of people to talk to in the morning except my dog, and that's usually yelling. So unfortunately, I really don't get a chance to clear my throat before this. I should do some singing practice or something like that. But yeah, let's just jump right into this. Edmonton at Boston. The fact is Edmonton only have 2 goals this year, and Boston are one of the all-around better teams in the entire league. I know we haven't really got a chance to use Edmonton in any kind of the main slate yet, so I think a lot of people are itching at the opportunity to play Connor McDavid, and I don't know. I personally think it's a mistake. It obviously can always pan out because he is the vocal point of their offense, but he doesn't really even have a floor outside of his points. So yeah, you don't get points for winning faceoffs. So he's not really super viable, especially going up against a Boston team at home who have one of the best lines in the entire league. If I was going to pick anyone from Edmonton, it would definitely be Draisaitl. If there's anyone that the Bruins aren't going to be intentionally marking or intentionally going up against, it's definitely going to be Draisaitl. So they're going to spend a lot of time worrying about McDavid. So I have no problem going up using someone like Draisaitl instead. But in terms of Edmonton as a whole, I'm really not all that interested. Cam Talbot was brutal last year. He's looking brutal again now. So I'm really not too interested. And on the flip side, I'm super interested in Boston. They're probably one of my favorite teams across the entire slate. The fact is, again, once you take Matthews or Tavares, it's really hard to take Bergeron, let alone Pasternak or Marchand. It's just not something easily done. Now, mind you, I think this is one of the top lines of the night in Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak. It's unfortunate how expensive they are, but at the same time, there's still value to be had on the Boston team, and there's value to be had across the board where you can fill in with. Probably my favorite play, in particular defensively, maybe not for the entire slate, but definitely defensively is a Greiss check on Boston at only 3.7K on DraftKings. It's an absolute steal. We'll bring up the Boston lines here, but he is playing first power play minutes with Boston, which needless to say is one of, if not the best power play in the entire league. So yeah, I have absolutely no issue stacking this entire power play, even Donato. In fact, what I would suggest is if you're going to focus on a Bruins stack, it should be Donato and Greischek, simply because they actually stack together really well, and then you can fill with everyone else. In particular, I really like Pasternak and Marchand. Not so much Bergeron, but there's no denying he got a hat trick last game, so there's literally nothing stopping him from doing that again. So yeah, I still prefer Marchand's assist or Pasternak's goal upside, but Greischek and Donato, this first power play unit, I think, is an elite stacking option for this slate, this very large slate, because once you take on the salary of those three, you're really hamstrung in terms of who you can go for. And don't get me wrong, that hamstringing isn't always the worst thing in the world when it works out, because it's still going to be super low owned. But yeah, if you're going to, I would take Donato and Greischek and then try and fill in as much as I can from there in terms of the high salary. I think McAvoy's also an option here on the Bruins. More of a fill than anything. I wouldn't try and stack him with anyone. He doesn't really stack very well, and he doesn't play the power play with the first guys. And honestly, Greischek's salary discount is just too huge to pass up this late, in particularly so on DraftKings. So I'm really into Greischek across the board, cash or GPP. He's excellent salary relief and a player that you probably should be locking in as much as possible this slate. So yeah, we'll keep him on board. But yeah, as a whole, I really like Boston. I think it's a 4-0 game. I think Rask is one of the best goalies in the slate too. Absolutely cash viable. The Oilers have only scored 2 goals this season. That's probably not going to stay the same for long. It could possibly be like an Edmonton 3-1 win if Edmonton comes out of their skin and really plays at the top of their game. But yeah, at most, Rask, I don't see him getting blown out. And at best, I see him getting a shutout with 25 saves probably as the ceiling. That's the thing. McDavid's still going to take a fair amount of shots. His line still, they just throw the puck on net, right? They're not really working in like the Capitals, for example, who will pass it 50 times. Like the Oilers are just going to rush it at the net. So you know you're going to get some saves from Rask, and he's definitely one of my favorite goalies of the night, that's for sure. At only 7.9K, he gives a really good discount break on the other goaltenders, who Vasilevsky isn't really tested enough this season to be relied on in cash. And we know Anderson's going to see 40 shots, but he's probably going to let in 4 to 6 of them. So I'm just really not super keen on something like that. But in terms of the overall roster build, I think this is a really good way to start in cash, because it's not too expensive, while at the same time it exposes you to all sorts of upside in the Boston game. The next game on tap is Colorado at Buffalo. I'm not really all that interested in this game too much. I think it definitely has some purpose, don't get me wrong. Nathan McKinnon's always a cash play. He isn't my first go-to cash play this slate because I like spending up in other places, but there's absolutely no question. We'll get to him whenever we see tiers. He's easily one of the better cash plays of the slate because of his massive floor. He leads the league in shots. He still blocks shots too, so it's like, you know, you're going to get some love from him no matter what. And basically, if Colorado are doing anything, it's coming through McDavid. Like he's one of those 99 percenters, I'll call them, where they're basically the team. Outside of them, there isn't really much of a team to speak of. So Colorado needs McKinnon, basically. So if anything is happening, I think Nathan McKinnon makes an excellent play. I wouldn't really stack him with much. I think Eric Johnson makes sense too. He's just a little bit too expensive for me at 5.4K. But in terms of his actual production, there's no question it's absolutely on tap. No wingers I would really like to target. Ratnan and Landeskog are obviously with McKinnon. They just don't possess any kind of floor or upside comparable to McKinnon. So I'd rather just take him by himself and avoid any kind of unnecessary risk, and even drop down to 4K guys who are playing in really interesting spots that are just as good or have even more upside than these two. So yeah, I think Varlamov is half interesting. I'm half interested here in going with some Buffalo, to be honest. I think Ristolainen's a really super sneaky play in both cash or GPP. He's super used in Buffalo. They don't really have much else to go through. His minutes are massive. Colorado isn't that impressive, especially on the road. I don't exactly see Buffalo like going ham. Scandella is another really super value option for cash on defense, especially at home. You know he's going to get the matchup every single time. time. So I think if you're looking for two really good defensive viable, cheap defensive options for cash, Scandella is definitely in play. But I wouldn't suggest it going up against McKinnon. That probably isn't the place you want to spend up if you are going to take Scandella. Personally, I'm not on either. I just don't see this game having the same kind of ceiling and ownership trends as some other games. I think McKinnon will still draw a lot of ownership in GPP because he's Nathan McKinnon. But in terms of a ceiling, I don't see this game getting any crazier than like 4 goals for Colorado. Maybe Buffalo can keep it like a 3-2, keeping it close to the very last minute. But yeah, I definitely see Colorado coming out the winners here. I don't really see it being overly productive for goaltenders. But like I said, there's some options on both teams here. But in particular, the first place I would actually look is a Scandella as some really cheap cash options. But yeah, 4-2 Colorado. That's probably my take. Nathan McKinnon goal and assist, which is going to be great, but not good enough to compare to some other players that we'll get to shortly. The next game, Columbus at Florida. I have a feeling this is what I'm going to be betting on anyways, trying to buy in early into the notion that Florida games are going to be extremely low scoring this season. In particular, already Columbus games are notoriously low scoring. Both these teams seem to be defense first minded, so I'm not particularly interested in targeting this game as a whole. I think Trocheck has some value, particularly he's playing first power play minutes at 5.7K. That isn't the worst thing in the entire world. I also like Pierre-Luc Dubois on Columbus from only 5.1K. It's really hard to deny that salary for someone who's playing first line. But at the same time, Florida are just a really super defensive team. So I don't necessarily see a lot of goals in this game. I think you could stack Yandel and Ekblad together if you wanted to be a really sneaky GPP play. They're both pretty cheap, and at the same time, at home they tend to get really good matchups, and they both basically exclusively play with each other. I'm just not basically my look in this game is I'm not interested in targeting Columbus, and I'm not interested in targeting Florida. I don't think either of these teams necessarily have a lot of defensive leaks, nor a lot of offensive upside that will break through each team's defense. So I'm thinking a 2-1 game Florida, a 3-1 maybe with an empty net. But I don't see this game shooting out. I don't see either goalie struggling to keep relevant. I don't see either goalie having necessarily a ceiling though, because there should be a whole lot of shots from either team. So yeah, that's really my take. Low scoring game. If you don't have a Florida or Columbus, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Columbus have been good enough, but just there's still a little, at least Werenski's below 5K, but like on the road, I'm just not interested in targeting Florida right now. James Reimer isn't the worst idea in the world at home since Columbus are such a low-scoring team. And conversely, you could always rock back to Bobrovsky. I'm just not trusting Columbus right now. There are a bunch of free agents waiting to happen. So I'm going to wait and see on them. And same with Florida. I'm a little bit more wait and see with their goal upsides. They look to be super low scoring this season. So 2-1 Florida. If you fade it, don't worry. Jumping on to the next game here, we have Washington making a quick trip to New Jersey. Washington, I believe, is coming in on a back-to-back. They beat Vegas 5-2 last night, I think it was. Yeah, exactly. Kuznetsov and Ovechkin are just tearing it up. But here's the thing. Tonight's a little bit different. Drum roll. They are starting Phoenix Copley as their goaltender. Now, all due respect, I happen to know a thing or two about having a cool name. Phoenix Copley's a pretty awesome name. If I was to draft players this slate in terms of what name I like, Copley would definitely be up there as one of my favorite takes. Definitely my favorite keeper takes, goaltender takes. But in terms of this slate, I think he's a massive target. His minor numbers were atrocious. His time in the NHL, which was very, very fleeting in the past, were atrocious. He's basically a 3-goal per game allowed kind of goalie. And while Washington's definitely one of the hottest teams in the league right now, if there was ever a time where we could kind of get a chance at them being too high, too much of a buy high, it's absolutely tonight. New Jersey at home is a huge shutdown team. They play the matchup. They're very good at it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Ovechkin's going to get shut out or don't play Ovechkin or anything like that. 7.8K is actually super, super affordable, especially if you're not picking on the two Leaf centers. So it's not, obviously it's not the worst idea in the world to take Ovechkin in cash because he's going to do Ovechkin things most of the time. But at the same time, I still think there's tons of other options. In particular, on the other side of the ice, we have Taylor Hall. And I think Taylor Hall's an absolute cash lock this slate. There's a lot of things to love here. Last season, you can pan off that if you want and say play Taylor Hall in cash. You can look at this season. He's already blocking shots, taking tons of shots. He's like that 99%er again that I was talking about earlier. New Jersey need him. He's literally all New Jersey have. So basically everything's going to be flowing through the stick of Taylor Hall. And if Washington are starting this bones brutal goaltender, I have absolutely no issue looking at New Jersey and GPP, looking at Taylor Hall and cash. Especially, I think King Clad makes a really interesting GPP option because if he can keep Washington under 2 saves, or excuse me, 2 goals, he's probably going to have more than enough saves to pay off from that. So yeah, obviously I'm really into the first line of Taylor Hall, Hischier, and Palmieri. I think the power play 1 is up there with the Boston Bruins power play for tonight. Taylor Hall, Hischier, Palmieri, Butcher, and Zajac. If I was to stack, what I would actually do is go Taylor Hall, Palmieri, and Butcher for some really interesting salary relief. Will Butcher's one of my favorite value guys of the slate. I'm not necessarily looking at him in cash. If you're going in cash, I would much rather just take Vatanen because Vatanen plays line 1, line 2 defense, where Butcher plays line 3 defense, line 1 power play. And the power play is more of a GPP script than a cash script to chase, but at the same time, 3.4K is just really, really cheap for a guy who's going up against a goaltender who's going to let in at least 3 goals. I don't necessarily like both Taylor Hall and Butcher in cash, but at the same time, I think this is a really interesting start for a GPP. Especially with Grychek and Tuukka Rask, who are probably 2 of my favorite fillers for the entire slate. Basically, every time I find my stack, the first place I really like to go is with Grychek. And probably my first goaltender that I really like to go with tonight is Tuukka Rask. So I think this is a really interesting start to a GPP card just because Washington are such a buy high at the moment that basically everyone's going to be on them. Everyone knows how good Kuznetsov and Ovechkin are together, so everyone's going to be on them. I'm not suggesting, again, that they both can't combine for 2 points, but these guys can combine for 2 points also for combined savings of like 3 to 4K in salary. So I have no problem with that. This opens up a lot of doors, in particular if you're looking to attack the Leafs in any kind of fashion. I think this is a really good way to start. Even if you want to just take off Taylor Hall, I don't hate it. And go Hischier and Butcher or Hischier and Vatanen. It's not necessarily that I like Hischier all that much. It's just he's playing first line against a goaltender that's going to let in at least 3 goals, and he's less than 5K. From this kind of salary, all you really need is someone who's just going to score a goal and maybe get a couple shots. So yeah, I just like those odds. Like I said, Taylor Hall, though, is a cash lock. And I think he should make your cash lineups this slate as an excellent Ovechkin pivot in particular, especially in heads up when a lot of people are going to be looking to play someone like Ovechkin. I think Taylor Hall makes an incredible pivot at a salary relief of basically $1,000 in DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's a little bit of a different scenario. He's a little bit more expensive, but yeah, I really like this for DraftKings. I think this is one of the more solid cash plays, especially starts. And like I said, everyone knows what Washington's about. Niskanen makes some really interesting value here in defense. If I'm looking to get exposure to the Caps, this is probably as far as I would go, just because I'm not looking to target the back-to-back salaries that the Caps have here. So yeah, in terms of what I'm really after, it's definitely New Jersey. I'm trying to pivot off that ownership in both cash and GPP. I'm hoping for around a 5-2, 4-2 scoreline for New Jersey. But honestly, anything that has New Jersey scoring more than twice and Washington scoring less than twice is ideal for New Jersey ownership. I don't mind Kinklad, but definitely not a cash play, more of a GPP. He does offer some interesting salary relief at 7.4K. So yeah, 4-2 New Jersey, Taylor Hall with a goal and 2 assists. On to the next game, San Jose at the New York Rangers. There's no two ways about it. San Jose absolutely trashed me last slate on Tuesday. They basically ruined everything. A lot of people had Couture. A lot of people had the defense, and they finally came out of their shell and decided that they're going to be worth their salary. Now, it took them 7 goals to get these kinds of scores. I'm just going to point that out. Frankly, 8 goals, excuse me. Any winger that costs 6.3K and only scores 3.5 points in an 8-goal game is probably a fourth liner. Any defender that does it, again, you have to question how they must actually be producing DFS. It doesn't matter how well they are obviously doing in real life. We can look at them on the ice and they're incredible. But in DFS, we really have to question whether or not that 6.7K is where we want to look. Personally, for me, no. Even though against the Rangers, I would much rather go with Evander Kane at 6.9K. I think he's a much better option. Yes, he's played one more game than most other players, but he also currently leads the league in shooting. Excellent floor. He's not blocking a ton of shots, but he has blocked shots. It's really the shots in general I'm looking at here. So as a cash play, absolutely, Evander Kane's 100% in play. He's not my favorite cash play, but I kind of feel like that's more recency bias on my end because I'm being a little sulk about losing last slate. So it's very possible Evander Kane's sitting as one of the best cash plays of the slate. I just don't like anyone going up against Henrik Lundqvist ever. That just isn't a viable way to make money. Yeah, he's losing games, but he's only let in 3 goals in those 2 games where Cam Talbot hasn't let in anything less than 4 goals a game in forever. And Vegas have let in 5 goals every game this season. Chicago have let in 5 goals, 4 goals at least every game this season. So, like, yeah, I'm just, this isn't the place to target for me in cash. GPP, it would make sense if San Jose weren't going to be so obscenely owned, but I know they are. So I'm just, there isn't a lot of edges here. Obviously, I called LeBlanc last slate, and he completely went ham. And, like, yeah, that's great. The fact was he still didn't play enough minutes, and it was more of just a viability call that he was in the right place. He got bumped up to first line. So, like, I don't even have a problem with LeBlanc if you want to be super cheap in cash and try and get some discount. But there's not even the problem with San Jose, there's no guarantee what their lines are going to be any given night. So, yeah, LeBlanc, not necessarily interesting to me. I know a lot of people are still going to be jumping on Couture at only 5.8, and I don't blame them. It's just, like I said, the Rangers aren't a great team, but Henrik Lundqvist is just such an elite goaltender. It's never really a great idea to target that. So, yeah, I'm not high on the Rangers either. I don't think they offer a lot in terms of DFS. Yeah, that's probably one of the worst first lines in the league. And I don't mind D'Angelo. It's just the third line. He's producing a lot though. But yeah, in terms of New York, I'm just not really that interested right now. Wait until they have, excuse me, a more viable option, a viable matchup against someone else, not San Jose. Like, I also think Martin Jones is going to be really high owned, and I don't blame people for jumping on that. Aaron Dell had a great game last game. It wouldn't surprise me if they started Dell again, to be honest. He was that good, and Jones has been that bad. So, yeah, I'm not sure where to go with that. Again, probably 3-1 San Jose. Like, they'll they'll do well, and anyone who has San Jose ownership will probably feel good until the end of the slate happens and other teams are putting up 7 goals, and it's not the Sharks tonight. So yeah, Lungfish just isn't the person you want to target. 3-1 San Jose. Oh, excuse me. I got to learn how to use a mute button. Vegas at Pittsburgh. This is another absolute banger of a game here where we have the Golden Knights who have allowed the most goals so far this season, and Fleury coming in for a revenge game in Pittsburgh. In terms of the Golden Knights, there's literally nothing across the board to target. Pacioretty's supposed to be their goal scorer. Mastro's obviously been their best option, and he's only getting 18 to 19 minutes a night. So this is a serious problem here going forward in terms of finding solid DFS production, because across the board, there just isn't any. And they've been generally outplayed to the tune of like 4 goals. So, generally speaking, if you're new to my videos or new to my strategies, one of my main strategies I call the Pittsburgh Penguins strategies. And it's basically when you have a team with 2 excellent centers and they're at home, you always take the cheaper second line center. The reason for this is because in most of these scenarios, for example, on Toronto, Austin Matthews does the offense. John Tavares does the defense. On Pittsburgh, Sidney Crosby does the offense. Evgeny Malkin does the defense. You can go across the board on different teams that have the same kind of build. Minnesota has one on the go. But yeah, like in terms of Bergeron does the offense, Krejci does the defense. Sorry for just jumping in there randomly. Kuznetsov and Ovechkin do the offense. Backstrom does the defense. I know that's a reverse in the 1-2, but yeah. In terms of cash, Malkin's too cheap at 6.6, going up against the team that's let the most goals in the league, and each game has been 5 goals. Yeah. Give me any team with Evgeny Malkin and tell me they're going to get 5 goals. He's probably going to be in on 2 of them. 6.6K is just too cheap. Is he the best cash play of the slate? No, I think he's slightly better than McKinnon, but neither of them necessarily have the greatest ceiling. So I think there's a lot of guys in the 5K range that have better ceilings for GPP, excuse me. If there was one guy on Vegas that I would target, it's definitely Cody Eakin at only 2.8K. He plays power play 2 minutes. He's one of the best penalty killers in the league. He led the league last season in shorthanded goals. So if you're on FanDuel, it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if they don't even have him in their player pool yet. But on DraftKings, I think Cody Eakin makes for a really interesting value play. Definitely not where I'm looking. I'm looking at Pittsburgh. I'm looking to stack Pittsburgh's power play 1. I'm looking to stack Pittsburgh's line 2 with Malkin and Kessel. Forget Hagelin, forget Gensel. And the same situation here. Just take this whole power play 1, maybe with some New Jersey, and try and find some super value there and get this whole crew in, because yeah, it's expensive, it's problematic in terms of salary, but if you can somehow fit it all in with a viable goaltender, unlimited ceiling against a Vegas Golden Knights team who haven't shown the ability to stop anything, and like really, really bad starters. I don't see this getting better anytime soon. So yeah, Malkin and cash, rock with it without too much concern. But in GPP, don't be afraid to go the full throttle with the Pittsburgh power play 1 and try and get them all in. Final score 5-1 Pittsburgh, 5-2. I think Vegas can score. Pittsburgh don't really have a viable goaltender, especially with the Smith starting. I'm not sure. Yeah. Long story short, Vegas are probably going to score. This isn't the place to find your clean sheet or your shutouts, and 5-1 Pittsburgh. Moving on to the most defensive, low-scoring game of the night, the LA Kings taking on Montreal. We can off the hop assume that both goaltenders are ultra viable in this game. Neither team necessarily should score more than 2 goals, especially LA. That's kind of their thing, and Montreal just aren't skilled enough to do so. Can they? Yes, obviously they've done so already this season. Paul Byron had 2 goals in the game. So there's no question here that Montreal can score goals. It's just they're going up against a defensive team in LA that's probably the best, next to Boston. They're probably the best defensive team in the entire league. Kopitar's incredible defensive forward. So Kovalchuk's really responsible in the back end too. Across the board, both teams are very defensive minded. But there are a couple of plays from Montreal that I don't mind. In particular, Joel Armia. I think he makes for a really interesting play at only 3.9K. Very viable in terms of roles. He's playing a penalty kill too, power play. So he's getting all sorts of minutes. He's looking excellent out there. 3.9K. I even don't mind him in cash, to be honest. The fact is that I don't expect a lot of ceiling in this game. So 3.5 isn't like the worst finish for him in GPP. But if you're really looking to take down, you'd want someone that's pushing closer to 5. And I'm not sure if Armia can get there. In cash, I think he scripts really well with this build that we have going right here. He should get 3 shots on net. I'm hoping he gets a point, either a goal or assist. But like I said, LA are just super tight. And yeah, really where I'll be targeting is either keeper, either Jack Campbell. I think he makes for a really solid cash option. He's a little bit more expensive than Rask, so I prefer Rask, but I definitely wouldn't talk you into taking Jack Campbell in cash. And for GPP, there's not much better options than Carey Price. Honestly, I think he's probably my favorite GPP goalie this slate. The fact is, this is kind of, if anyone follows my soccer stuff, there's a team in soccer in the English Premier League called Wolves. I'm sorry for talking about soccer. I swear it's 15 seconds and it's totally relevant. Wolves are this team that always keep games under 3 goals every single game they play. So immediately that means that you're looking at goaltenders that are super viable because you know no matter what, they're not going to get blown out. So any script that you can put forward, any possible imaginative situation that's probable that you can come up with, it's always going to be low scoring, which means shutouts are way more probable, which means 7,000 is just way too cheap for someone who could very, very easily, against a team that doesn't score goals, very easily get a shutout with 30 plus saves. So yeah, I don't hate this. It's probably my favorite GPP goalie. I don't necessarily expect Montreal to win, but if you look at LA games, Jack Campbell didn't win last week either, and he still outscored a couple of winning goaltenders. So it's just like I said, it's a situation where it's low scores, so we can look at both goalies. 7K is just too cheap for someone that is going to be in a low scoring game like this. 2-1 tops either way. I think what I'm really hoping for is 2-1 Montreal. It's probably going to be 2-1 LA, maybe 3-1 either way with an empty net goal. But an ideal scenario would be a 1-0 either way. Either of the teams pull off a 1-0 win, and then the goaltenders will both be viable, while at the same time, Montreal's salaries like Armia can still be viable without a goal. He can still pay off in cash. So yeah, that's my Montreal and LA take. I don't necessarily like anyone for cash except for Armia. Maybe, let me take that back. Rephrase. Jeff Petry's absolutely viable in cash at this slate too. I think he's going to have 2 points alone and block shots. So yeah, Jeff Petry, he's definitely in play too. A little bit more expensive. Definitely not my favorite cash plays, but he's definitely in my top 5 cash defenders for sure, very easily. But yeah, Armia and Petry and Carey Price or Jack Campbell if you are just looking for another goaltender option. 2-1 Montreal. Let's say that. 2-1 Montreal. Toronto at Detroit. So I'm a lifelong Leafs fan. If you didn't notice at the start of the video, I wear a Leafs hat. I don't really take it off very often. Also, because I'm ashamed that I shaved my head, but because I care very deeply for the Leafs, and they're obviously doing very well. The problem with them is, first of all, Frederik Andersen can't keep a shutout. Detroit, if he doesn't keep a shutout against Detroit, like literally last hope, he's single-handedly given teams like Montreal and Ottawa the confidence to go forward in this early portion of the season and do half well. So I'm not necessarily looking for him to shut down Detroit. I want him to because I know he's still viable to get 35 to 40 saves every other night. And if he gets a shutout, that's great. And like you can maybe go with him in cash if you wanted to be like, yeah, the win is there, but 8.4K in DraftKings is way too much for someone who's probably going to let in 4 goals. Even as crappy as carry price has been, or as bad as the Habs have been, they still haven't let in any more than 3 goals in the game, and it was an overtime loss against Toronto. So, yeah, take it for what it's worth. Frederik Andersen just can't keep pucks out of the net. And 8.4K is an obscene amount of money for someone who can't do that. And what I'm really, truly praying and hoping happens is that he draws all sorts of Leaf homer ownership and all sorts of people jump on him thinking because he's so expensive, the Leafs will win. And they probably will win, but they'll still let in at least 3 goals in the process, making Andersen's 8.4K absolutely unviable in every definition, if that's even a word, unviable, non-viable, whatever. Sorry. Again, I'm Canadian. Language isn't really important. You just be thankful I'm not talking in French half the time. So yeah, Frederik Andersen, 8.4K, too much. But I do think Morgan Rielly makes sense in cash. He's probably my favorite way to get at the Leafs. There is enough, like the problem with Matthews and Tavares is they're both super expensive. They're going to be both super owned, and eventually one of them's going to hit a brick wall. Probably tonight. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Detroit has been great, but this is such a GPP script that Detroit comes out and stifles the Leafs somehow at home with matchups, which I don't even think is possible against the Leafs, but like, who knows what can happen? Anything can really happen with the Leafs goaltender and defense. But in terms, like, no one here is going to be able to handle Matthews or Tavares. Like, there's no question. It's just the fact that they're super expensive. And they're really hard to pick between because Tavares actually has the floor. So if you're looking to play someone in cash, you actually want Tavares. Where in GPP, you probably want to go to Matthews because he doesn't really have as much shots or block shots as, or maybe he has more block shots. That was a large amount, 7, 5. Yeah, look at that, 18, 14. Yeah, so more shots on goal, roughly the same block shots. Their minutes are garbage. Like, they're really bad. And it's great that they're producing so well, but they're doing it on really minuscule minutes where, for example, find someone. No, that won't work either. I'm trying to make myself look smart here and find a centerman that gets more minutes. I don't want to click Malkin because I have a feeling that he probably won't see as many minutes. Yeah, exactly. Malkin doesn't play a lot of minutes. I got to 21 there. They just don't play enough minutes for the salary that they're making. Are they viable? Absolutely. Like I said, I like Tavares cash, Matthews GPP, but their ownership's so foolish that like you literally have to do something after that that's going to be different than everyone else. Getting Kadri in may not be a bad idea if you want to double down just to be different and hope to get a piece of the power play. Because again, like they don't even stack very well. Their power play is second line center, third line center, first line center, second line winger, first defender. So like they don't even line very well. You can go Tavares Marner maybe if you want, but that's so obscenely expensive. It's like you literally can't afford it. Like this one I'm hoping obviously is that a lot of people do that and then they can't afford Boston. And then they can't afford Evgeny Malkin, and they can't afford Taylor Hall and some of the other guys we're going to talk about here shortly. So, like, yeah, it's interesting enough in terms of Detroit has been very good, I will extend an olive branch here and say Jimmy Howard has played a lot better than his stats will show. That's pretty good scores for someone who lost back-to-back games in overtime, especially against a team that's leading the league right now in Anaheim and a really capable team in Columbus. So, yeah, I do think Detroit has it in them to sneak this in. Do I think it's a assured cash thing? God, no. I would rather take Toronto all day. There's one more Toronto player I think is a must play, especially if you're trying to get exposure to the big scoring without spending everything, and it's Casper Kapanen at only 4.7K. I like Riley a lot. Is he a cash lock? No. Kapanen is absolutely 100% a cash lock. You can't not take someone who plays power play and first line minutes on the Leafs and costs less than 5K. Oh, he's dropped off the power play. That's a bummer. Never mind. I take that back. See, this is kind of a pain because when he was playing first line, it was awesome. But now that he's playing fourth line, kind of a poop shoot, really. You're getting no stacking viability there at all. Like Levo, I guess you could go. Why would you do that? Levo and Ennis as a stack, you know? I guess maybe if you want to be super different and still get the Leafs, but yeah, I still like Kapanen a lot, even for cash. I have absolutely no issue for anyone who's going to play with Austin Matthews. But like I said, I also like Morgan Riley. So yeah, 5-3 Leafs, 5-4 Leafs is going to be a lot less comfortable than I think a lot of people would like in the third period. Detroit's probably going to score 1 or 2 in the third to make it a lot more interesting. But yeah, the Leafs should win. Frederik Andersen won't make his salary on DraftKings. Next game, Vancouver Canucks at the Tampa Bay Lightning. Vancouver's literally traveling to the other side of the continent on this road swing here. They don't have a goaltender. They have one defender who's ultra viable as well for cash. If they weren't playing the Tampa Bay Lightning at Tampa, I would be taking Alex Edler without even blinking. But the matchup isn't great. Tampa Bay, I think, is extremely sneaky. They're not something I'm looking to target at the moment. Tanev is very, very viable as well if you're looking for some really cheap cash options. He's blocking a ton of shots, playing first line, second line, first line. So 3.4K is probably too cheap, even going up against the Tampa Bay Lightning. You only really need him to block some shots and maybe get a shot on net, and you're flying from that salary. Obviously, he's not my favorite cash play. Let me go back to my favorite cash play. But yeah, in terms of Tampa Bay, very interesting. The situation with Tampa Bay right now is that they've only played one game, and it was against a very defensive-minded Florida, which I remember going back, I talked about already, very low-scoring game because that's what Florida games are. So a lot of the salaries here are stunted, to say the least. Stamkos, I would love to say that Steven Stamkos isn't washed up and the injuries haven't gotten the best of him, but it's tough because he just isn't the greatest DFS option for most nights unless the Lightning are on fire. And it's great they were last season. I want to take him in cash. I really do, because I know 6.4K is just too cheap for Steven Stamkos. But that basically got you the rest of the way. And I'm not really interested in finishing off with like Matt Niskanen or Scandella or one of those other cheap viable options. I'd rather spend a little bit cheaper here in the second center spot. I do love Tampa Bay for GPPs. I think they make for one of the best GPP stacks of the night. I don't necessarily like their line one. because Palat drops off. But this is where I'd definitely target right here would be their power play 1. I would stack this in GPP with Boston's power play if you can. It's a little bit expensive, obviously, but guys like JT Miller and Braden Point should offer some really, really good salary relief, especially JT Miller, who I'm half considering for cash. I took him last slate in cash, and it really didn't pay off, obviously. But at the same time, he's just playing first line with Steven Stamkos all the time against Vancouver, who have no goaltender. He should be fine. Like, he really should be fine at 4K. That shouldn't be a problem. But I'm just not ready to do that in cash yet. I want to desperately. I just can't. McDonough makes for a really interesting option too. I think stacking some of the second power play unit could be very interesting. Super low owned. I don't really see as much upside as the first unit, but I really do like McDonough by himself. I think McDonough makes for an excellent cash play, despite his lack in the first game. He's playing 25 minutes. Obviously he's still putting shots in that. He blocks shots. One game shouldn't be too much to read about. I really like Ryan McDonough. He's one of my favorite cash plays, up there with Morgan Riley. And the situation where I need a little bit extra money, I'm going to drop down here to him, because basically Hedman hasn't been doing it for a while. He isn't really a DFS relevant player. So I'd rather take McDonough across the board at a 5.2K from Tampa Bay, and probably the only player I'll be ultimately targeting from Tampa Bay. Yeah, carrying on to the next game, we have one of my favorite games of the night, Calgary at St. Louis. Now, as anyone can tell you over the first couple of slates, Calgary has been absolutely going off. The thing is tonight, see, like, their first 2 games are against Vancouver. Okay, so grain of salt there. Then they go into Nashville and have an incredible game. Now, don't get me wrong, they played really well, but Nashville isn't necessarily a team to go out and take it to another team. So I think they gave Calgary a few too many inches, and they were able to get involved and take a handle on this game. Now, tonight, Calgary is starting David Rittich. And if anyone remembers last season, much like the Washington Phoenix Capote, whatever his name is, where are they? Yeah, Phoenix just Copley. He's a walking 3 goals allowed. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, with Tampa and Boston, St. Louis should absolutely be the place to look tonight when you are looking for points. Ryan O'Reilly is far too cheap and is definitely one of my favorite cash plays of the night. He doesn't necessarily have the world's greatest floor. It's decent enough, and he's been playing excellent this season despite St. Louis's poor record. But the fact is that he will be fine from 5.6K, playing line one. So, like, yeah, I think he's on the penalty kill. I'm not entirely sure about that. Sorry. But in any case, 5.6K is just way too cheap. I think he's a standard play for cash this slate. Now, in terms of GPP, easily my favorite stack tonight is Tampa Bay, St. Louis line 1, Ryan O'Reilly, Tarasenko, and Patrick Maroon, because it's also power play 1. Ryan O'Reilly, Tarasenko, Patrick Maroon. You're not losing an inch whenever you stack these 3. You know you're getting all the line 1 minutes in even strength and power play. Pat Maroon makes for incredible value. He isn't necessarily a floor play whatsoever, but at the same time, he's just playing on one of the better lines in the NHL. 4.7K is just a little bit too cheap for that. But Tarasenko is easily my favorite play of this entire slate across the board, hands down. Cash, not so much. GPP, all in Tarasenko, St. Louis line 1 against Calgary and David Rittich. They should have the matchup however they want it. Calgary have shown themselves to be pretty deep this season, but Dylan Dubé isn't looking like he's 100%. So even if he does play, even being an inch behind to St. Louis will really cost them, who, again, are one of the more deeper teams in the league. Tyler Bozak, third line, 4.2K, plays first line power play. But yeah, Tarasenko, absolutely where I'm looking this slate. I'm even trying to use him as my main filler for most GPPs. I'll be very surprised if he's over 7% owned in this massive slate. Once you take Toronto, there's literally no way to afford Tarasenko. Once you take Washington, there's no way to avoid Tarasenko. McKinnon mixed in with Boston or San Jose, there's absolutely no way you're taking Tarasenko. You can't afford him. Pittsburgh, zero way whatsoever you're able to afford him. So, like, yeah, he just falls through every single cracks. He has the hat trick upside. Yeah, I have literally no issue with Tarasenko here. Like I said, not as bullish in cash, but he could lead after, like, that's the thing here is like Evander Kane, everyone's so high on Evander Kane, and I understand why. Obviously, he's playing on a very good team against a very bad team, and he leads the league in shots, but San Jose have also played one more game than everyone else. If Tarasenko does his 5-7 impression here for one more or two more games, Kane won't be the talk of the town anymore. It's going to be Tarasenko and his shot. So that's all this can take is a little bit of implied or anticipated value of what it should be coming here from St. Louis. Like I said, Calgary are a deep team, but they're literally starting no goaltender who should let in 3. I'll take Tarasenko. I don't think he'll score all 3, but I do like St. Louis this game. The problem I do have is that St. Louis – Jake Allen has been letting in ridiculous goals, 5 goals both games. He's supposed to be much better at home. I'm hoping that comes to fruition. I'm not going to take him in cash or GPP. I'm going to fade him for probably allowing 2 goals on 18 shots and just not paying off. But at the same time, yeah, across the board for St. Louis, I think Vince Dunn is an excellent value play, probably one outside of Growlcheck, one of my favorite value plays on the board. He has the goal upside. So, yeah, 4-2 St. Louis, maybe 5-2 if they're really lucky. Tarasenko with 2 goals, though. I do like that. Maybe even an assist. Jumping on to the next game, Winnipeg at Nashville. Really not sure how to take this game. My first instinct says this is going to be another 2-1 game, another really low-scoring game, because Rene just doesn't get blown out for more than 3 goals. He doesn't always win, but he just doesn't get blown out. And Winnipeg, on the other hand, are in a very similar situation where they very often – they got blown out against Dallas, obviously, but that was at Dallas. So, like, grain of salt, right? Again, 2-1. They just aren't letting in a lot of goals, and that's a history. Winnipeg, Hellbuck is one of the best goalies last season. Excuse me. Am I looking to target Winnipeg going in against Pecorine? No. Am I looking to target Nashville going against one of the league's better teams? No. So there just isn't a lot to target here. I think there's still going to be a lot of ownership on Winnipeg because people are homers and they'll see these salaries and names and think, wow, Shelfley is definitely not a 6.1 player, or Laune is worth more than 6.4. Blake Wheeler's worth more than 6.3. But the fact is, Pecorine halves them. Like, he really guts them in terms of their overall production. Is he going to get blown out? I really doubt it. It isn't a thing for him at all. So, yeah, too expensive in terms of PK Subban, in terms of a lot of the other options. That hurts. I know 3.5 doesn't sound that bad, but, yeah, he still had a really good floor. Probably not the worst cash play now that I'm talking myself into it. Even against Winnipeg, he's still going to block a lot of shots. But in terms of the forwards, you can always go with Craig Smith. I just don't like I need more goal upside this slate. There's going to be so many goals on some of these other games that jumping in a 2-1 game could be pointless when the guy finishes with a goal and 4 fantasy points and everyone else in his salary range is kicking at 7. Don't I know? That's what killed me last slate. So, yeah, interesting game. Maybe 4-2 either way as a max ceiling, like the absolute highest score. 3-2 Winnipeg. Yeah, let's go 3-2 Winnipeg. They probably win it late. It could even go to overtime. Wouldn't surprise me if it goes to overtime. They're just very evenly matched teams. I don't think Nashville's going to win because they just haven't been playing as well. And Winnipeg is a good team. So, yeah, 3-2 Winnipeg. Final game of the night. If you've tuned in this long, thank you very much for sticking with us. You are now getting the sharpest play of the night. I'm so excited for this game. I'm so excited that it's the last game of the night because not many people scroll this deep into the schedule once they fill their cards with huge names. The fact is, Patrick Kane's awesome. Don't get me wrong. He isn't who I'm going to talk about. I'm not here to talk about the Blackhawks today. This is not what this video is about. This is an anti-Blackhawks video. If you've tuned in to hear me talk about Patrick Kane and how great he is, you can just turn off now. There goes all my viewers. Okay, I'm just joking. But in terms of I think there's way better options from that salary. The long and short of it is Minnesota are historically slow starters, but they're very defensively minded. Chicago has easily, not even a competition, nowhere even close, the worst goalie in the league right now. It's not even remotely close how bad this guy is. This is all his fault. All his fault. All these goals, Chicago shouldn't have to score 6 goals. They shouldn't have to score 5 goals or 4 goals to win games. So the Chicago Blackhawks, they should be beating teams 3-0. This is atrocious. He's letting in beach balls. Like, I'm trying to be nice about it. He has made some bantam level hockey. For anyone who doesn't know, that's like Canadian 14, 15-year-old bantam age, bantam level mistakes in net this season. Paddle down stuff. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah. Target Cam Ward. Anytime you see Chicago is playing Cam Ward, just pick the other team. We happen to get them at some incredible prices this slate. Dubnyk is a really interesting GPP option. I'm not going to target him in cash because Chicago still does have the obvious ability to score 4, 5, 6, 7 goals a game because they have to. But in terms of, I think he has GPP upside because eventually Chicago just isn't going to be able to score, and they're always, until like they get a different goalie, they're still going to let in 4 or 5 goals every single game. That's not going to change. Their scoring could, their defense isn't. So Dubnyk could pull off an interesting win. He's a really great goalie. He's like 6'9" on skates, so like he takes up all the net. He's a massive dude. Obviously without a win so far. Don't read too deeply into that. Look at his scores without the wins. Like, Minnesota keep their games close. Obviously not. I wouldn't read too deep into that first game of the season. But yeah, across the board, they have incredible options here. Matt Dumba is one of my favorite GPP plays of the slate. 6.3K is going to literally scare everyone away whenever they're looking at Carlson, Burns, and Riley, and Edler. They're going to just skip him without even thinking about it. The fact is, again, he's probably going to take 5 shots on net, and if you take 5 shots on net against Cam Ward, you're probably going to score on one of them. So yeah, Matt Dumba, probably one of my favorite GPP plays. Ryan Suter is an absolute cash lock this slate from 4.6K. Get this guy into your cash cards. The fact is, he's playing minimum 25 minutes against Cam Ward. 25 minutes. Like, this is not new. He's done this now for over a decade. This is his thing. This is what he does. He just plays nearly a half hour of a game every game, well over a period. Again, he's literally playing over a full period against Cam Ward. He on the ice. He's going to score. He's going to get an assist. He's going to get something here. 4.6K is way too cheap for someone going up against Cam Ward. That's my Ryan Suter rant. Thank you. Play of the slate easily. I would have had him as my title page cover if more people knew who Ryan Suter was. So yeah, I'm a huge supporter of him this slate at 4.6K. I can't stop raving enough about him. Lock this guy into your cards. The next cash lock for this slate is someone that you're absolutely going to have to play is the winger Zach Parise at only 5.6K. Again, much like Suter, this guy has literally made a career of taking 4 and 5 shots a game every single game. That's 2 points, 2 fantasy points flat every single time. You know you're going to get this. If you give me anyone with 2 fantasy points on the go against Cam Ward for 20 minutes, a full period of ice time, again, like how can you possibly go wrong on this? The Blackhawks are just that bad with Cam Ward. So like I just don't see 5.6K line 1, line 2, or line 2, excuse me. So like Minnesota are weird in the sense that their lines are really janky. Let me rephrase that. They're very consistent. The same players only play with the same players all the times, but they're janky in the way they look. Like Zucker and Eriksson Ek instead of Granlund and Parise in the first line. You know what I mean? Like those two obviously should be the first line. So like yeah, they're a very deep team. Charlie Coyle is one of my favorite GPP plays of the slate at only 4.6K. Absolutely nothing wrong with this guy. Plays on the power play too. Third line, second line, big shooter. I think Jordan Greenway is super, super sneaky. If you're looking to be really, really random this slate, Jordan Greenway is probably the first center that I'm going to target. Really cheap, going to have literally no ownership. And the 4K kind of shows you that he's a little bit more valuable than all the other guys that are at 2.8, 3.2, 3.6K centermen that play third line, nothing else. So I really like Greenway this slate. Only for GPP, only for GPP. As you can see, he's done literally nothing. But I just like Charlie Coyle so much this slate, and even strength Minnesota's third line. I think that's really interesting going up against a Chicago team who should have literally zero answer. And to finish it off, I'm definitely taking some Mikko Koivu in my life because he only plays with Zach Parise. They don't see the ice without each other. And again, Dumba's here, Charlie Coyle's here. I don't mind Jared Spurgeon, obviously, but that just isn't the guy I'm looking at. Ryan Suter playing 25 minutes. Like, just get these guys into your cars this slate. When you're looking for cheap, super decent value, while at the same time getting massive goal, game-winning, high ceiling upside, Koivu and Parise is easily the first place I'm going to turn to this slate. And as you can see here, this is a really sharp cash card, in my opinion. Really, really, really sharp cash card. Still leaves you with a ton of salary, so you can get a half-decent goaltender and someone in the 5K range. Again, I wouldn't take Vasilevsky in cash because he's not tested. I wouldn't take Anderson because you know he's probably still letting in 4 goals. Jack Campbell's in a low-scoring game, so you can roll with him. Tuukka Rask, though, is definitely the first place I'm going to be turning. And that still leaves 5.2, which is more than enough salary to kick around with. Then you got, like, McDonough. Excellent cat. Like, there's a cash card for you, secret. But again, like, Kapanen isn't really that much of a cash play. You can drop him down to someone like JT Miller. And again, you're making even more salary here with 5.9K. And what you do, you can keep McDonough and jump Rask up if you want. You can even drop Rask down. I don't even honestly. For those who can't see right now, I'm holding up my right hand. I swear, solemnly swear, I don't even mind Carey Price in cash. 7K, LA is just not that offensively gifted. They are obviously, but they're not that attacking minded. So, like, again, 6.8K, that's elite. That's an elite player that you're bringing in, like an elite cash option. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I think this core right here is really solid. I prefer Rask. as my my cash goalie. But if you're looking for a good early morning cash skeleton to start building from, Evgeny Malkin, Mikko Koivu, Taylor Hall, Zach Parise, Greiselcheck, Ryan Suter, Tuukka Rask. If you're feeling that's a little bit too GPP on Minnesota, drop out Malkin and go to Ryan O'Reilly. I have absolutely no issue with him if you want to stay cheap in cash this slate. Even Stammer, if you want to go in cash, like just do it. You know, I want to. I know he's too cheap. Take him and JT Miller, and you'll still have 4.3, 4.5 left to work with. So yeah, cash. I love this. I think this is really where you should be looking to go this slate. There's O'Reilly there. So yeah, this leaves some options here for everyone. But yeah, again, playing against the team that has allowed the most goals in the league. Playing against a goaltender who's historically 3 goals against, playing against a goaltender who has literally no NHL caliber experience to speak of and is a walking 3 goals against in the minors, playing against a goaltender who's allowed 4 to 7 goals in every game this season. Super decent value and getting exposure to arguably the best line in the NHL. Playing 25 minutes against the goaltender that's allowed 4 to 7 goals every game this season, and playing against a team that's only scored 2 goals all season, and still having a guy like McDavid who you know is going to put 5 to 7 shots on net just because he can. So yeah, that is my my NHL cash and GPP breakdown for DraftKings. What I want to do now actually is very quickly bring up some tiers. I think there's still more to talk about with the tiers this slate. Just give me 1 second. Make sure we're doing okay. Looking good. Tiers. Sorry. And this is literally just the first person for every line. It's in no way a card. Sorry. Let's move away from that a little bit. Okay. Tiers. Give me 1 second here. I'm just going to quickly take a quick look to make sure I don't have any questions. I think we're all good. Yeah, I'm not overly popular. So I did 2 questions I want to answer from last week. Darn it, I meant to do it at the very start because I'm very surprised if everyone's still tuned in this far. In terms of my cash GPP breakdown, generally speaking, whatever I'm playing in GPP, I always double in cash. So if I'm playing $12 in GPP that day, I always make sure that I'm playing at least enough money that if I win in cash, it will cover everything I played in GPP. Most of the time, I try and go a solid 80% cash, 20 GPP, even go as far as 90-10, 95-5. I'm mostly a cash player. Last season, I dominated in cash heads up. So it's definitely my forte. It's a little bit different this season. The meta's changed a little bit with the scoring. There's so many more goals right now that it's really something I have to reconsider in terms of how many players from the same game do I want in my cash, which kind of goes back to Minnesota. Don't be afraid of Koivu and Parise and Suter in cash as your cash core. Like, it seemed to work out so far this season. People taking 3 players from the same team. So yeah, I saw that in the comments there last week. So that should answer that question. How much cash GPP do I play? And all my articles are posted at RotoPros.com. If you head over to RotoPros.com, look in the top right-hand corner, you'll see articles. All of mine are under NHL, NFL, and soccer. I obviously do all the soccer. I have one NFL article every Sunday morning that comes out called Player from Every Game, my PFAG article, where I talk about a player from every game who I think hasn't been getting any love. And obviously, I do my my NHL whenever I get the chance. Usually, I leave that up to other people, but whenever there's no soccer for a week or it's a slower week, I'll always try and get some NHL writing done too. But generally speaking, my videos are just going to be videos. I won't always have the chance to make them to scripts. But yeah, that's basically it. Let's see here. In terms of, let's get to the tiers now. I think that was the two questions I really wanted to answer from last slate I saw on the questions on the bottom of the video. So yeah, let's see here. Tiers. So tier 4 isn't where I want to start. Tier 1. Austin Matthews, Patrick Kane, John Tavares, Alex Ovechkin. So game takes. Tavares has the best floor. Matthews obviously is awesome, but he's more of a ceiling player. I prefer him in GPP. Patrick Kane has an excellent ceiling, really good floor in terms of shots, but no block shots whatsoever. He's playing excellent minutes, especially when I touched on how Tavares and Matthews aren't playing enough minutes. He's definitely getting it done. But probably my cash play is going to be John Tavares. Kane's very close behind him. I would take Ovechkin most nights if he wasn't coming in on a back-to-back. But since they played last night, it's just not the exact thing I want to target. I'd much rather take Patrick Kane's 5 shots. I would much rather take John Tavares' 8 shots against Detroit. So yeah, John Tavares is probably where I'll start, though I don't hate Kane or Ovechkin for cash, but Matthews is definitely where I would stick for GPP. Tier 2, Patrice Bergeron, Nathan McKinnon, John Carlson, Pasternak. I don't really feel like Bergeron or Pasternak are cash plays. They're definitely GPPs, and it's a problem that they're in the same tier because generally you want to stack them. So I have a feeling somewhere within here there's going to be Marchand, and that's the idea that you're going to stack with probably even McAvoy or Chara too, one of the others. So yeah, McKinnon's the obvious cash play to me, easily the best floor of the entire group. John Carlson, like I said, on the back-to-back isn't what I'm interested in. However, in GPP, I can't think of many more high ceiling starts to a card than taking Ovechkin and John Carlson. Because in Tier 3, obviously, you see Marchand is there, Eichel, Marner, Goudreau, and McDavid. Now, for this tier, I actually really dislike, and for a little bit, I was considering not even playing a tier's cash because this tier is so weak. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm not playing Bergeron or Pasternak over here, and if you were, you're kind of hamstrung into playing Marchand. And you wouldn't be playing McDavid anyways if you had those two, and you really shouldn't anyways. He definitely doesn't have the floor. So yeah. I don't. I think Eichel's more. I think they're all GPP plays, to be honest. Like Eichel's done well enough. He's playing first line against Colorado, but that just means more likely he's going up against McKinnon. So you really can't take that. Marner's the obvious stack with Matthews or Tavares, depending if you want to go the even strength or you want to go the power play route, excuse me. But obviously, the real should be Tavares, Marner. And again, if I'm playing cash, that's probably what I'm going to do because none of the rest of them really makes sense as a cash play, except for Marchand, who even then has only taken 2 shots all season. He's just been racking up the assists and isn't really getting minutes. So yeah, I'm definitely on the Marner train for cash. Mostly because I'm taking John Tavares, and it just helps things along nicely. Tier 4, Jonathan Taves, TJ Oshie, Tarasenko, Evander Kane, Sidney Crosby, Kucherov. Kucherov's not tested enough this season yet to be trusted in cash. Sidney Crosby, despite going up against the worst defense in the NHL, he is viable, but by all definitions, he's not as good as cash play as Evander Kane or Tarasenko or Oshie. All 3 of these guys make for excellent cash plays. I'd probably land on Evander Kane just because I think the Rangers are the least talented of the bunch. Tarasenko, I think, is more of a GPP play. And TJ Oshie, again, that stacks really, really, really well for Washington. If you start back in Tier 1 and you start Washington, Carlson, and then TJ Oshie, Let's just keep going because I'm sure there's more Washington players here. Like, yeah, okay, none there, none there. On there. So yeah, there's your GPP starting stack. Absolutely. Without salaries, like even if you think Washington's going to lose, you still have to do this at least once in GPP because it's so obscenely high end. It's there for a reason. That's 28 odd points there looking at you. So yeah, you got to play that in GPP. But like I said, I'm a little bit more focused on cash with this. Where are we? We'll go back to Marner here. They don't really like it. Yeah, like I said, probably Vander Kane, just because he has the most solid floor and is playing the worst team of that crew. Next, I would probably go Tarasenko, if anything. I may actually end up going Tarasenko just because I like him so much, and I'm afraid of Lundqvist. But yeah, that's tier 4. Tier 5, Morgan Riley, Kuznetsov, Marchessault, Malkin, Kopitar, Eric Carlson, Taylor Hall. I think this tier is absolutely jam-packed with cash options. You can use Morgan Riley, and he works very well in this kind of little stack you have going with Toronto, which is kind of a contrarian to Washington, which will still have a lot of ownership. You can go Kuznetsov, like we showed with that stack. I'm not really interested in Marchessault, despite Pittsburgh not having a goaltender either. I think Malkin's probably where I'd go with this tier, just because he's going up against such a garbage defense in Vegas. Kopitar is too defensive minded, and the game's going to be too low scoring. I don't even consider him GPP viable. Eric Carlson can be used in either, obviously. He works really well, again, if you go back to tier 4 and you decide to use Evander Kane. This is a really solid stack for cash, too. But in terms of, I prefer the Leaf side of that, obviously, and or excuse me, the Tarasenko side of that with Morgan Riley is where I was going to go. But yeah, Taylor Hall's also here too. I think he makes a really interesting pivot in cash. I think he makes a really interesting play in GPP too because no one will be on him. In terms of like especially the Washington or Pittsburgh or Eric Carlson or Morgan Riley, they just won't get down to Taylor Hall. But yeah, I think Morgan Riley is probably my cash play. It works well with the Toronto they already have, and on top of that, he's one of the better cash plays as is. Tier 6, Elias Pettersson and Alex Edler from the Canucks, Sean Monahan, Calgary, Kyle Connor, Winnipeg, Vincent Trocheck, Florida, Mikko Rantanen on Colorado. Excuse me, sorry about that. Joel Pavelski on San Jose and Steven Stamkos on Tampa. The reason I liked Stamkos so much was because he was 6.6K, not because he didn't have a salary. Especially in this group, it's really hard to use Stamkos in cash when you can have Pavelski and a team that's scoring insane amounts. I would take him in GPP and stack him with McKinnon, but I really wouldn't look for this in cash this slate. Trocheck, same idea. GPP, maybe. I'm still considering it to be a low-scoring game, so I'm not as interested. Kyle Connor, same idea. He's cash viable, but low-scoring game, so I'm not really interested. I'm just not interested in Calgary as much. I think that's a GPP play. Edler's the only really obvious cash play of this entire crew, and it doesn't really necessarily work. Elias Pettersson definitely isn't to me going up against Tampa, but thankfully we haven't taken any other Tampa players here, so we can kind of fall on Ledler and his crazy floor. He leads the league in block shots, still gets a ton of shots on net, plays insane minutes, has excellent scores for good reasons. So yeah, I'm all about the Edler and cash here. He's the safest 5-point floor in the league. Like every single time you play him, he's going to get 5 points. So whenever we don't have a salary, it's pretty helpful in cash, especially from that tier. I don't know. I don't really necessarily see 5 points. He couldn't GPP. I don't really see 5 points. He couldn't GPP. He couldn't GPP. He could, and he could. But this is just for sure. So yeah, Alex Edler. Tier 7, Letang, Ryan O'Reilly, Wheeler, Patrick Laine, Matt Dumba, Panarin, Brent Burns, Victor Hedman. Of the two San Jose defenders, Ryan McDonough is better over Victor Hedman. Of the two San Jose defenders, I'm not sure if I said San Jose there. I meant to say Tampa Bay. Of the two San Jose defenders, Carlson has been playing better. So immediately those two are not in my radar. Low scoring game. He hasn't been playing very well this season. Matt Dumba, I think, is an incredible cash play here with no salary, and it's probably where I'm going to go. Now, mind you, Lane is an obvious cash play. I just feel it's a low scoring game. Blake Wheeler, same deal, low scoring game. I think Ryan O'Reilly makes sense in either cash or GPP for tiers because he works so well with Tarasenko. And you can also very easily use Letang. I have absolutely no issue with Letang whatsoever, especially if back here you're using Malkin or Crosby. I think both of them make a really viable option here. Where is Malkin not in tiers? I don't remember seeing Malkin's name. Okay, if you're back here using Crosby in cash and not Tarasenko, this Letang makes a lot of sense. So basically, tier 4 and tier 7 are two tiers that you really should be looking to pair because O'Reilly, excuse me, and Letang work so well with tier 4. But as a whole, I think Matt Dumba is the better cash play against Cam Ward. Like I said, he's going to get enough shots on that to make it super viable. Is he my favorite? No, I'd probably like Letang a little bit more if I'm being honest. I just think a lot of people will be on Letang, and if you're on Letang, that really forces you into Crosby. And if you're on Crosby, I'm really not digging it as much. I prefer the Malkin side. So yeah, I think the Tarasenko here maybe works just as well if you're looking for a little bit less correlative floor. But yeah, I really like Letang and Ryan O'Reilly and Matt Dumba from tier 7. Tier 8, PK Subban, Scheifele, Larkin, Horvat, Atkinson, Kovalchuk, Couture, and Barkov. So Barkov works with Trocheck. Remember, we looked at Trocheck back a little bit there. He stacks really well. Couture stacks really well with all the San Jose numbers we saw because we can still get, I believe, Burns by himself. We can get Pavelski by himself. We can get Carlson by himself. And we can get Couture. Not to mention, I think that was Evander Kane. Is he by himself? Evander Kane's by himself. So you can basically have the entire San Jose team here that's been scoring 7 goals a game going up against one of the league's worst teams in the New York Rangers, but at the same time, they have a goaltender that could stop everything and steal the slate. But yeah, Kovalchuk, 2 low scoring of a game. Cam Atkinson, 2 low scoring a game. Bo Horvat is viable in the sense that he plays line one. I'm just not looking to target Tampa Bay at home. Dylan Larkin makes sense in the sense that the Leafs are absolutely rotten defensively. But at the same time, if you're taking so much Toronto, it's a little bit heavy. It's more of a GPP comeback kind of game stack. PK Subban's the obvious choice here for me. Easily the highest floor and the highest ceiling of that whole list. Without a salary, it's really hard not to take him. So yeah, that's really again a breakdown of the tiers. I think you should probably go Tavares, McKinnon, Marner, Tarasenko, Riley, Edler, Letang, Subban. It's got a lot of defense on it, but again, a lot of floor. You don't necessarily need the goal upside that people will be chasing. My one fear is obviously that there's one winger here that people beyond that just steals the show, and if you didn't have him, you were screwed. Like for example, Ovechkin or Matthews. But in terms of there is Malkin. I knew I saw Malkin here somewhere. It was Morgan Riley. How many Pittsburgh players can you get on here? Did I see Kessel or I don't remember. I don't think so. Anyways, yeah, I think there's lots of stacking options and tiers this slate. There's lots of things to look at there. Let's very, very quickly jump over to FanDuel. Let's see if I have that up ready because there are a few plays here that are much better over in FanDuel. There we go. Starting with goalie, obviously, you see how high up Bobrovsky's rated. Vasilevsky isn't the highest. Holtby is super expensive, which is interesting. Fleury, considering he's let in 5 goals every game, really surprising. Yeah, Tuukka Rask chilling there. Dubnyk, interesting for GPP. Carey Price again getting on the cheap side, but him and Campbell, you could literally make the same GPP card, double it in, and just rotate these goalies, and you're probably still going to win on both, and just win better with one or the other. Yeah, I really like that. Those salaries. Who else we got? Kincaid, one of my favorite GPP plays of the night. Really cheap on FanDuel. Who else? I don't mind Jimmy Howard. Honestly, he's been playing okay, but yeah, like so bad, so bad, so bad, so bad. Like those guys are so bad. Those 4 goalies, so bad. 5 goalies. So yeah, basically any Minnesota, any Pittsburgh, any St. Louis, any New Jersey, any Vegas coming back, you'll probably be okay there with goals this slate. And all of them will be pretty low owned. So yeah, for defense, you see the San Jose. Obviously, the Tang's much more expensive over here. Hedman, Carlson, Subban's up there. Morgan Riley's not expensive enough over here. There's already a couple names we haven't seen. Ryan Suter, a little bit more expensive over here, but Alex Edler's way too cheap over here at only 5.2K. What else do we have? Eric Johnson's way too cheap at only 5K over here. Ryan McDonough is way too cheap, 4.8K. This is where we start getting into some of the good ones. Charlie McAvoy is way too cheap. Sammy Vatanen can be used at only 4.6. Matt Dumba on FanDuel is an absolute must play at 4.6K. Borderline free play, honestly. He's going to see so many minutes and opportunities. And like Jeff Petrie over here is way, way, way too cheap at only 4.4K. Nothing to suggest he can't stop a million shots. Matt Niskanen, 4.2, way too cheap. Who else do we got? That looks like it in terms of like the super viable options. But yeah, Scandell, there he is, 3.8K. Really, really cheap. Jack Johnson is someone that's really interesting to me in Pittsburgh. He's so bad DFS wise, but so good in real life. So I'm kind of waiting for him to have a little bit of a breakout. Where is the rest of the New Jersey? Where's Butcher? Will Butcher. That's who I wanted to look at. 4.3, one more expense, 100 more than this can. So yeah, interesting. Okay. Moving on to wingers, Ovechkin, Kane. Oh, see how expensive he is over here. That's an indication of DraftKings. You should really load up because he's super cheap. Tarasenko, again, too cheap on DraftKings. Patrick Lang is really cheap over here. Vander Kane's probably too cheap over here. Yeah, Zach Parise. JT Miller is a little bit too expensive for me over here at 6.1. Where's all these gold guys that were down here that I absolutely was loving? Too cheap over here at 5.2K. You know he's still going to get shots on net. There's Charlie Coyle, excellent GPP option, 4.9. Wonder what Kapanen is over here. Edmonton, Toronto, Detroit winger is even listed. 3.8K sounds great to me. Get exposure to that Leafs. Yeah, like centers. See, what's interesting over here to me is Austin Matthews is all the way down here, and that makes him a borderline must play. And it really gives light to how you really should be playing Malkin over on DraftKings. McDavid's just too expensive. The Bergeron line's too cheap over here. The centers is really where I'll be paying the most attention to this slate. It sucks that you only get 2 of them and not like the 4 wingers, but like I think there's just so many viable options down when you get cheaper, like Ryan O'Reilly, 5.9K, Mikko Koivu, 5.7K. I don't even hate Max Domi, to be honest. But yeah, Kadri, 5.4. Who else? Bozak's half viable at 4.5K. Where's Heischer? That's who I really wanted to see. 6K, a lot more expensive than I expected. Not interested in that over here. But yeah, again, like you take something like Tarasenko here, and you're flying. Still 7K left per player. There, 6.3 each. And you don't need a 6.3 defender. You can take one if you want, because there's still going to be lots of options there. But when you spend down here, it's pretty crazy. So I think where I'd probably go on FanDuel for cash, just like the quick real rip that I looked through, definitely Austin Matthews is too cheap over here. There's no reason not to play him. And I really liked Ryan O'Reilly's price. I'm not crazy about him in cash, though. There's got to be a better cash option here. Probably Mikko Koivu I would take before Ryan O'Reilly. Felt that there was a better cash option for cheap and centers. I really like Cody Eakin. I think I talked about him a little bit already. Shorthanded, led the league last season in shorthanded goals. Yeah, that's really that for the centers. The wingers, obviously, I still really like Taylor Hall, but I wouldn't talk you out of Ovechkin. Taylor Hall, you can take Tarasenko if you want. You're biting off a lot with that. And then you obviously want to drop down a little bit then to like Parise. May even Malkin's too expensive, unfortunately. I would like to take him over here. Go back to cap probably. I think so. But yeah, just continue, gives you an idea. Just gives you an idea. I'm sorry for wasting everyone's time here. Just dead silence looking at me scrolling through things. 4.6. Literally tattooed Dumbo and FanDuel somewhere on your body so you remember. So yeah, that's a little bit, I think with Rask, a little bit too expensive. Yeah, 400. You're not getting that. So yeah, you'll have to drop probably Tarasenko. But yeah, I really like this card. I think it's pretty interesting. Yeah, that is my NHL takes. Really, that is basically it. I don't really have too much more to say other than that. So thanks a lot for tuning in once more. Get one last look at my beard and my no hair. My name is Rob Diamond, Rad Rob Diamond on Twitter, RotoPros.com. Top right-hand corner, you will see the articles and all the different types of articles on here. Make sure to like and subscribe. Please sign up so you can get all of our videos when we send them out. I'm not going to have a show tomorrow morning. I will be back on Saturday morning, hopefully, since there's no soccer. I will talk about NFL. And hopefully this afternoon, too, I will have my player pool article out for tonight. So everyone, thanks a lot for tuning in. Take care. RotoPros.com. Get over and check us out. Have fun. See you at the top. Much love.